One question dominated American sprinting before the 2026 USA Track and Field Championships. Who was truly the fastest man in the country? Christian Coleman looked unstoppable after his recent performances. Kenny Bednarek entered the meet as the defending national champion. Ronnie Baker was quietly rebuilding his form and ready to surprise everyone. But when the championship final arrived, only one athlete answered that question with authority. On the same track where Usain Bolt once created history, Noah Lyles delivered a performance that reminded the entire sprinting world exactly why he's still the biggest name in American sprinting. The men's 100-meter competition at Icon Stadium featured one of the strongest fields of the season. The venue itself added even more significance to the championship. It had been more than 3 decades since the USATF Championships were last held there, and fans couldn't help but remember the unforgettable moment when Usain Bolt ran his legendary world record on this very track in 2008. It was the perfect stage for another memorable night of sprinting. As the opening round got underway, Christian Coleman wasted no time making a statement. The former world champion exploded out of the blocks and stopped the clock at 9.96 seconds, the fastest time of the first round. Noah Lyles followed closely with an impressive 9.97, looking smooth, relaxed, and completely in control. Kenny Bednarek comfortably secured his place in the next round without showing his full speed, while Courtney Lindsey and Ronnie Baker also advanced with solid performances. After qualifying, Lyles didn't look like a man under pressure. Instead, he smiled and spoke confidently about the track conditions. According to him, the surface felt incredibly fast, and he believed the championship final would produce something special. At that moment, it sounded like confidence. By the end of the night, it would prove to be exactly right. The semifinals took the competition to another level. Kenny Bednarek controlled the opening semifinal from start to finish, crossing the line ahead of Courtney Lindsey with another impressive performance. Although the strong tailwind meant the times wouldn't count for records, both sprinters looked comfortable, composed, and far from their limits. It was clear they were saving their best for the championship final. Christian Coleman responded immediately in the second semifinal. Even without his trademark explosive reaction, his experience and acceleration were enough to carry him to another convincing victory. Once again, he reminded everyone why so many people still considered him the favorite heading into the final. Then it was Noah Lyles' turn. The atmosphere around Icon Stadium changed the moment he stepped onto the track. Ronnie Baker reacted brilliantly to the starting gun and briefly moved ahead, but Lyles refused to panic. He stayed relaxed, trusted his race plan, and gradually began building speed. Meter after meter, his trademark top-end acceleration took over. Before the finish line arrived, he had surged past the field to record the fastest semifinal time of the day. Even with a wind-assisted mark, the message was impossible to ignore. Noah Lyles was ready, but raw speed wasn't the only story surrounding this championship. For months, fans had been talking about the growing rivalry between Noah Lyles and Kenny Bednarek. Their tense confrontation after last year's 200-meter final had become one of the most memorable moments in American sprinting. Since then, every race between them had carried extra pressure. Bednarek arrived in New York as the defending national champion, determined to prove he still belonged at the top. Lyles, meanwhile, had won 7 straight 100-meter finals against his biggest rival and had no intention of letting that streak come to an end. By the time the finalists were called onto the track, the atmosphere inside Icon Stadium had completely changed. Thousands of fans rose to their feet as the 8 finalists settled into their lanes. Christian Coleman stood in lane 4. Noah Lyles lined up in lane 5. Kenny Bednarek occupied lane 6. 3 of America's biggest sprint stars stood side by side, separated by only a few meters, but within seconds, only one of them would walk away as national champion. The stadium fell silent. The athletes lowered into their blocks. Every eye was fixed on the finish line. The gun fired. Coleman exploded out of the blocks exactly as expected. Bednarek matched him stride for stride, producing one of the quickest starts in the field. For the first 30 meters, Lyles was slightly behind, and for a brief moment, it looked as though he had given his rivals too much of a head start, but Noah Lyles never looked concerned. Later, he admitted that he never felt the race slipping away. His coach, Lance Brahman, had given him one simple instruction before the start: stay close enough that they can never escape. Lyles trusted that advice completely. Instead of forcing the issue early, he stayed relaxed, letting his race develop naturally. As the runners approached the halfway point, the gap began to shrink. At 60 meters, everything changed. Lyles shifted into top gear, his stride became longer. His turnover became quicker, every powerful step pulled him closer to the leaders until, almost effortlessly, he surged past both Coleman and Bednarek. The final 20 meters belonged to only one man. By the time the finish line arrived, there was no doubt who had won. Noah Lyles crossed first, threw both arms into the air, stuck out his tongue in celebration, and shouted with pure emotion as the crowd erupted around him. Then everyone's attention turned to the clock: 9.79 seconds, a number that instantly became one of the biggest performances of the season. Not only was it the fastest 100-meter time recorded anywhere in the world in 2026, but it also matched Noah Lyles' personal best, proving that he had reached championship form at exactly the right time. Behind him, the battle for second place was unbelievably close. Ronnie Baker and Kenny Bednarek crossed the finish line almost side by side, with only the photo finish cameras separating them. Both athletes were officially credited with 9.88 seconds, but Baker claimed second place by the smallest possible margin. Christian Coleman, despite dominating the early rounds, was forced to settle for fourth after clocking 9.93. It was a surprising finish for an athlete who had looked like the strongest contender throughout the preliminary rounds. The championship final proved one thing more than anything else: a great start alone isn't enough. When the pressure is highest, the ability to finish a race often matters even more. And once again, Noah Lyles showed why his closing speed remains one of the most dangerous weapons in world sprinting.